Thank you for joining us in celebration of the 95th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution and the women's right to vote. Congratulations. By my estimation, we have 4 to 5 generations of guests in this room, and no one has known what it's like not to be able to vote. So we thank all of the people that came before us to make that happen. We are also very fortunate this year to begin our program with the inspiring song, God Bless America. And we have Zelda Mercado, a former Motown singer and matriarch of Talented Daughters, Saisha Mercado of American Idol fame, and our own local favorite, past president of AAUW, Xtavia Bailey. So, Zelda, if you would join us for the singing of God Bless America. Following the hymn, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence and reflection of the meaning of today.
Good afternoon, everybody. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above, from the mountain through the prairie to the ocean, wide we're born. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Okay, our theme this year is to reflect, celebrate, and engage. And if you look on your tables, we have cards representing the Florida Women Hall of Fame. And that was thanks to the League of Women Voters, I believe, that put that together, and the governor's, the Status of Commission of Women, Sarasota Commission. I'll get that right. Sorry, new speaker. I'll have that right in the thank yous. We're all here to celebrate. We have over 30 groups, almost 400 people that have come together from businesses, from schools, from organizations to celebrate the very important passage of the 19th Amendment. And what I'm going to call to action is to engage. While we talk about it, we think about it, we do nice things, we get together about it, but what we really need to do is focus on engagement. So to each and every one of you out there, and especially to the women, it took us 80 years to pass the 19th Amendment. It's been 95 years since it passed, yet still there's not items that we've accomplished, a to-do list if you say, such as pay equity in the workplace. We are stronger together, and I just want to make a special note that this year we've had the pleasure of having 21 of these before us, and this year we have AAUW, the League of Women Voters, and the I apologize for this. The Commission on the Status of Women, Commission of Status of Women. Sorry, I practiced this, and this is going to be my little glitch today, so thank you for your patience. So we are stronger together when we get together. We're very pleased to be here as a group, and what I'm going to call for women to do this year is we need to make sure that we exercise our very precious right to vote. That 53% of the voters in the United States are women, and just yesterday they mentioned that 54% of the voters in Florida are women. So we need to use our power, we need to vote, but we also need to be part of our community and make sure that we assist those that cannot get out to vote, that we help them vote. We need to run for office. We need to take leadership positions. A lot of women will say, well, you know, other people are doing a good enough job, it's time for us to step up, to make the time. And then we need to volunteer and be active in our communities. In the room today, we have 5 generations of guests. Our youngest generation is in this room. We have students from our middle schools, high schools, and universities that represent our future. Do we really want them to do it alone, or do we want to take the collection of all of our experience and knowledge and assist them in achieving beyond our dreams? And let's shorten that timeline. Let's not wait 195 years to be celebrating equity in the workplace. Let's see if we can accumulate those successes much more quickly. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed your delicious lunch, and special thanks to the Polo Grill, Jamie, Tommy, and their team for a wonderful luncheon. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to introduce our head table. First, I would like to introduce Dot Ridings, our Equity Luncheon speaker for today, Dr. Judith Sedgman, Honorary Chair of the Equity Luncheon, Valerie Fisher, Treasurer, League of Women Voters of Manatee. She's standing in for Rosalie, who is traveling in Europe someplace right now. So we're thinking of her. Judy Aker, President of the League of Women Voters of Sarasota, and Joyce Raby, Sarasota Commission on the Status of Women. And allow me to introduce myself. My name is Martha Prue, and I'm the president of the AUW Bradenton branch, and we're newbies to helping organize this event, so thank you for your patience. The event would not be successful without the assistance of the host committee, whose names are listed on page 8. So I guess the teacher and me will demonstrate the booklet, this beautiful program that's been put together. So if you open up to page 8, you will see the host committee. So open up your book to page 8, and you will see the large number of people that needed to help with this wonderful event. And could the host committee please stand? And I would also like to recognize the other committees that were integral in this event. The Women's Equity Celebration Planning Committee and the registration table with the League of Women Voters of Sarasota. Could the host committee, the planning committee, and the registration committee all stand? We really appreciate your efforts today. And ladies, the big message is we're stronger together. So thank you for all of our groups coming together once again. We would like a special thank you to our sponsors. Again, go to your beautiful brochure, and you're going to go to page 8, and we have gorgeous logos of all of our sponsors, and we are deeply appreciative to each and every one of you for not only hosting the event, but helping sponsor several of the seats for our students in attendance for today. So thank you so much for your efforts. We really appreciate having you in the community, so thank you to our sponsors. Okay, at this time, I would like to recognize the students that are in this room. This is the last weekend for most of them before they start school, and they're giving up their Saturday. We have some of young students that are in middle school, all the way to university students. We have high school students. We have world champions, national champions, state champions, local champions. We are just so fortunate to have these students in the room. So students from these schools, could you please stand and be recognized? We love having you here. And again, the key word was engage. We have students in our schools, and sometimes you get overwhelmed when you see so many students, but even if it's one at a time, we can make such a big difference, and they'll lead the way and shorten that timeline. So thank you, students, and we look forward to seeing you often throughout the school year. We'd like to recognize several of our current elected officials who are attending today, as well as candidates for the upcoming elections. So as I announce your names, please stand, and if we could hold the applause to the end, because I actually have a pretty impressive list of our officials and candidates that have spending their time with us today. So first, from AAW Bradenton Branch, we have Honorable Susan Malucci, 12th Judicial Circuit Court Judge. Susan? The Honorable Greg Stubbe, Florida House Representative, District 73, and candidate for re-election. From Manatee County, Honorable Betsy Benak, Manatee County Commissioner. Honorable John Chappie, Manatee County Commissioner and candidate for re-election. Honorable Karen Carpenter, Manatee School Board Member. Honorable David Minor, Manatee School Board Member. From Sarasota County, we have Honorable Shirley Brown, Sarasota School Board Member and former Florida State Representative. Honorable Willie Shaw, Sarasota City Mayor. Honorable Suzanne Atwell, Sarasota Vice Mayor. Honorable Liz Alpert, Sarasota City Commissioner. Honorable Susan Chapman, Sarasota City Commissioner. We have Honorable Jacqueline Moore, Northport Vice Mayor. Honorable Rhonda DeFranco, Northport City Commissioner. Honorable Linda Yates, Northport City Commissioner. We have some former elected officials. Honorable Peggy Simone, former Florida State Representative. We have Honorable Pat Glass, former Manatee County Commissioner. Honorable Barbara Turner Grace, former Manatee School Board Member and former Mayor of Bradenton Beach. Honorable Fred Atkins, former Sarasota Mayor and candidate for Sarasota County Commission. And we have candidates here in the room. We have our own Xtavia Bailey, candidate for Manatee School Board. Edward Viltz, candidate for Manatee School Board. And Ron Turner, candidate for Sarasota Supervisor of Elections. So we thank you very much for representing our communities and helping them make what they are today. Thank you again. We have a very special thank you to the Florida Commission on the Status of Women for attending and for facilitating the book signing of a new book by author and historian Doris Weatherford. The book showcases the many contributions of Florida women, and the book was recently published by University Press of Florida, the publisher for books from Florida Public Universities, and we are the very first stop on the promotional tour. So thank you very much for the, and I believe that the, I'm going to mess up on who's. Okay. The group had responsibility. Again, take a really good look. These cards right here, teacher and me. Take a look at your cards here. These are Florida Women Hall of Fame. So enjoy reading about all of the important women in our past, and hopefully we'll see many of your faces in the future. We would like special recognition at this time for Dr. Mona Jane. She's the co-founder of the Women's Equity Day celebration that started 21 years ago.
Hey, Mona. Diana Green's here, the superintendent.
I'm going to introduce her. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take care.
You'll take care.
I'm going to do the greetings. I'm not going to read these, but I will say that we have been always fortunate and that we get the greetings from all the people who are involved at the national and state level also. So we have here Governor Rick Scott greetings on page 10. Florida Commission on the Status of Women, page 11. National Association of Commissions for Women on page 4. League of Women Voters of Florida, page 12. And AA, American Association of University Women, Florida Division on page 13. Please do read these also. because they carry a special message for us. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but it's always good to. Then we have the proclamations from Manatee and Sarasota counties, and also city of Sarasota and Northport. I know all of us are looking forward to listening to our speaker, Dot Ridings. So I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I do mention something, and I'm going to be very brief also. Dot Riding was the co-sponsor with me. We met in her office downtown Bradenton Herald in 1994 and said that the 75th anniversary is coming, so we need to do something. Which one you want me to use? Okay. At that time, Manatee Commission on the Status of Women was the sponsor, and League of Women Voters of Manatee County became co-sponsor. I was with the Florida Commission, and Dot was the former president of the National League of Women Voters. And we have quite a few founding members here. I won't go in details. Mary Runnell, Pat Glass, and few others are around also. And then also, I would take a minute, because I think it's important to know that we have the Florida Commission on the Status of Women Foundation members here also. They have traveled from Tallahassee, Miami, and so on. Blanca Becerra, who is the founding member of the foundation. And then we have Kelly Skiba, who is the executive director of the Florida Commission on the Status of Women. We have Michelle Manning, assistant director. And then, of course, we have the author and historian Doris Weatherford, a friend of mine, and a former member of the commission also. We both were appointed in 1991 when the Florida Commission on the Status of Women was put in the statute by Governor Childs. And then I stayed on and was appointed, and I won't get into, because today we are only talking about voting, vote sensibly, regularly, no party discussed. But there is a joke in Tallahassee that I have been appointed by both Democrats and Republican elected officials. Next, I would like to introduce also three people. I think we all are here for education, and our students are here, so I think they need to know. One is Dr. Diana Green, who is the superintendent of the Manatee County school system. Dr. Laurie White could not be there. She always comes. She is the superintendent of the Sarasota County school system. Then we have Dr. Sandra Stone, Chancellor of University of South Florida. And we have new college represented today by Emmy Reed. We always get their president to come, but he could not come today. So Emmy Reed, New College, is here also. Next, I'm not going to read about the book because it's already printed at the back. Why we wrote this book 8 years back? Because this is a comprehensive book, and we felt that women were not represented, so a small group of us got together, talked to our friend, author, and historian Doris, and also talked to University Press of Florida. What we want to do is that we want us to purchase not book for ourselves, but additional books, or get donations so that we can put it in every school, college, and university library, and also later on retirement homes and other places. We are not thinking about Florida only. We are thinking about nationally, And then we have a UN woman group represented here. We have Foreign Service. We live in a community very cosmopolitan, Peace Corps worker. We want to put these books at the global level in the girls' schools also. That's all I want to say, and I thank you again. And this is going to be my last year, because 2014 I said 20 years I carried it through. Now I won't be doing any more, but this year I always believe in good transition. So I stayed on, and it's wonderful when we collaborate. We have 4 AAUW groups joined in also, so that makes it wonderful. So my thanks from the bottom of my heart. I'll be around, I'll be phone call away. And but I do. And please, the book will be signed at that table. Feel free, if you can't buy it today, you can buy it later on. Locally, you can call me. I'll have the books also for the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mona. I've known Mona for several years, and I have to admit, somehow, some way, she has this way of, is the word dragging you into something that you didn't quite know you were getting into? But she definitely was instrumental in getting me involved in STEM education and career technology education in Manatee and Sarasota counties, and for that I'm deeply grateful. Okay, at this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Judy Sedgman. She is our honorary chair.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Before I say anything more, I have to say a word or two about Mona. For those of you who have known Mona for years, this would go without saying, but there are so many younger people in our audience who may or may not know that at a time when there weren't very many women leaders in Manatee County, Mona Jane stood up and drew people together and said, we want to do this for women, for our daughters, for the future. She certainly was an inspiration to me. I moved here in 1970, and she's one of the people I met first. She's always been a great and inspiring lady who has a way, you can never say no to Mona. You all know that have worked with her. But she is among so many women that I think a lot of us forget as the years go by. I've talked to my daughter about this, that we forget that there were, within our lifetimes, opportunities were denied. Things were not available to us. Women was considered unseemly to run for office. Ask Pat Glass, who is one of the most distinguished county commissioners in our history. It took courage, it took leadership, and it took people like Mona Jane to wake that up in so many of the rest of us. So I really wish that we could all give her a huge round of applause for all the work she's done. Mona asked me to say a few words about myself, but I really am not wanting to do that because I look around the room and there are so many women here who I admire so much and who have been such inspirations to all of us that I feel that whatever I've done is not very meaningful. But I will say this. I voted for the first time in 1964. And I remember when I registered to vote, I had to wait till I was old enough to vote. When I registered to vote, I was so excited because I had just spent a good deal of time in college, and among the things I studied, of course, was American history. And I knew how difficult it had been for the women who came before me to make that moment possible for me. And I remember standing there at the office registering and bursting into tears because I thought, I have an obligation to these women for the rest of my life to carry on and to offer as much as I can to the women that come along behind us to help women succeed and become as great as they can be. It was such a privilege, and I get very sad when I look at the statistics and see how few people vote. It seems like fewer and fewer with every election, and honestly, people, it's our country. If we don't vote, we can't talk about it. So we all have the right to vote. It was hard won, hard fought. It's something for which we are eternally grateful as women that we are able to vote along with everyone else. And I hope that all of us turn out, because nothing is more important than exercising your rights in a free country. You know, I was so honored when Mona asked me to introduce Dot, because when she came to Bradenton to become, I was living in my first iteration in Bradenton, then I moved away for 20 years, then I moved back. But when she came to Bradenton as the publisher of the Bradenton Herald, it was stunning. You'd have to realize there were not women publishers who weren't married to somebody that owned a paper. In journalism at that time. It was just unheard of. And she brought such dignity, such grace, such skill, and such a consensus-building attitude towards her work here in Bradenton. And she represented Knight Ridder newspapers as one of the greatest that they could have had here. And as she was telling me, you know, Alva Chapman, who was at that time the publisher of the Knight Ridder papers, he was from Bradenton. And she was surprised when she was the person selected to come here to be publisher, because it was a risk at that time to put a woman in that position, but he could not have chosen better. So I know that you have access to Dot's bio in the program, but I'm going to do this, and because there's so many younger women here, I'm going to do this. I'm going to read her formal background. Not because I expect anybody will remember everything, but because I want you to see what a woman of accomplishment, a woman who's combined career, family, and service to community, which is one of the great gifts that we bring, can accomplish in a lifetime, which is certainly still well in progress, even though she's retired. So forgive me, I just feel like it's important for you to know this. So Dot Ridings is the immediate past president of the Council on Foundations, the Washington-based membership association for grant-making foundations and corporate giving programs in the U.S. and abroad. Until her retirement from the council in late 2005, Dot was annually named to the list of Power and Influence Top 50 Leaders in Nonprofit Community, as selected by Nonprofit Times Magazine. Before joining the council in 1996, Dot's professional career was as a journalist, as you know, working as a newspaper reporter and editor at a number of various newspapers until she became the publisher of the Bradenton Herald, which at that time was a Knight Ridder paper. She is a graduate of Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism, has a master's degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and she holds honorary doctorates from 3 other universities. She served for 4 years as the president of the League of Women Voters of the United States and 10 years on the League's national board after serving as president of the local league in Louisville, Kentucky. She's an elder in the Presbyterian Church and was named an honorary lifetime trustee of Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary after 21 years of board service, including 8 as chair. She has served on the boards of the Ford Foundation, the Benton Foundation Independent Sector, and the Foundation Center. She has also served on the Accrediting Council for Law Schools of the American Bar Association and the Accrediting Council for Journalism Schools of the Accrediting Council on Education and Journalism and Mass Communications. Currently, she serves on the boards of the Association of Theological Schools, the University of Charleston, the Presbyterian Outlook Foundation, the Cedar Lake Foundation, the Community Foundation of Louisville, and the Louisville Free Public Library Foundation. And she is a director of the Commission on U.S. Presidential Debates. In other words, she's a hell of a woman. And I'm so happy to introduce our very special guest, Dot Ridings.
Well, I know this is something that you have heard at the beginning of many formal remarks, but it is so true. I am so honored, delighted, pleased, thrilled to be here today. I've renewed a lot of, not old acquaintances, but, you know, nearly a few years ago acquaintances, and met some new folks, and it has been a joy and a delight. So thank you for the invitation. Of course, as she said, you don't say no to Mona. That's very true. My family and I spent 8 years in this area during the years when I was publisher of the Bradenton Herald, and those were very special years for all of us. Now, a lot has happened since then. My husband, Don, whom some of you knew, died not too long ago, not too long after we had moved from Bradenton, and he was often vocal about the wonderful friendships he made here, especially among those who fish and ride in boats and things. Our older son, Don, had just started college when we were here, and he's now a lawyer in Washington, D.C., and gave me 3 grandchildren. And younger son, Matt, who still checks his iPod from time to time to find out how Southeast High School is doing in football. I kid you not, we hear about Southeast all the time. He's working at a restaurant near our home. He's very active in Special Olympics sports, and he loves computers and, as I say, sports of all types. As for me, you heard a lot from Judy about what I've been up to and what I'm still up to. I did move back to Louisville after retiring from the Council on Foundations, and I happily fill my hours, as she told you, with the organizations that have been dear to my heart. I'm still active in the League of Women Voters as a local league member, and that's where I became so interested in the impact that women have had on our democracy, which then led to activism to make sure that we never forgot any of that. Hence my interest in Women's Equality Day and this Equity Luncheon. The invitation to be with you on this day in 2015 sent me back to my own files to see what I had been like when my family lived here. As the publisher of the Herald, I wrote a Sunday column on the op-ed page, and pack rat that I am, I kept them all. Remember, this is before computers, could store stuff. Now, Mona, of course, has told you of sitting in my office to talk about how to mark the anniversary of the passage of the 19th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. But I was very glad to have those yellowed newspaper clippings to confirm what brought us here today. Dateline, August 1993. My column for that Sunday began this way, quote, "Women's Equality Day passed without a ripple in Manatee County last Thursday." What's that, you say? Haven't heard of it? End quote. I went on to ask why the Commission on the Status of Women, the local leagues of women voters, and the branches of the American Association of University Women weren't doing enough to mark the occasion, or anything to mark the occasion. A year later, August 1994, my column began with a statement of several historic things that had occurred in the Bay Area, as well as throughout the nation, in 1920, when the 19th Amendment was finally passed by the number of states required to make it an official part of the United States Constitution. My column said, quote, "These events were lustily celebrated on Friday at Manatee County's first 19th Amendment luncheon. The event drew some 250 people to a balloon-filled room at the Holiday Inn Riverfront," end quote. Betty Castor, then the president of the University of South Florida, was the speaker. And she told the crowd that, quote, "When you consider that this nation denied women the right to vote for 144 years, and to this day continues to tolerate discrimination against women in so many forms, I think the progress we've made is nothing short of remarkable. In fact, it's astounding," end quote. And so it is, and so it remains remarkable. But with so much yet to do. And to do it, we are energized by remembering where we came from. We honor those amazing women who led us to the progress that Betty talked about that day by reclaiming their passion and their advocacy to move things along to even greater gender equality. And we do have an uphill job, and I think everyone in this room knows that. But it's just one example. The new September issue of Vanity Fair magazine published the results of a poll of more than 1,000 adults on issues of inequality. And while the poll mostly concentrated on issues of race and income, one question was about gender rights. The question was, when did the Equal Rights Amendment become part of the U.S. Constitution? 48% gave various dates. Another 27% said they didn't know. Only 25% said never, which is correct, since the ERA, a particularly hot topic in the 60s and 70s, failed ratification by the states. So some 3/4 of those who were polled apparently think gender equality is no longer an issue, perhaps complicated by confusing the ERA with the 19th Amendment. Now, as an aside, attempts are still being made to resuscitate the ERA, which has been reintroduced in the United States Congress every year since 1982. I know we're all aware of the many unsuccessful attempts in Florida to ratify the amendment, although on the state level in Florida, the Constitution does outlaw gender-based discrimination. And in Kentucky, we still talk about our contribution to ERA history, since our legislature ratified the amendment in 1972, then voted to rescind it in 1978. But that was foiled when our female Lieutenant Governor, Thelma Stovall, took the opportunity when the governor was out of town to veto the rescission. Now, the equality issue is even part of many jokes today, most of which I do not appreciate. But the recent one that did give me a chuckle concerns the announcement by Treasury Secretary Jack Lew that a woman's picture will replace that of Alexander Hamilton on the $10 bill. The identity of that woman is undecided, but he said it would occur in 2020 to mark the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. My laugh came when a friend said she didn't think it was a good idea to put a woman on the $10 bill because that bill would then be worth only $7.80. She was, of course, referring to the fact that women who hold comparable jobs to those of men are not paid comparably in many cases we know about. According to the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average woman worker now earns 78% of what men earn when doing comparable work. Now, as I wrote those remarks, the memory of that beginning to my newspaper, excuse me, I think I've, sorry, I skipped a page. I was going to say, I know that many people say that years away from a paycheck due to childbearing and child care needs account for part of that difference in the wages. And there are variables other than that, but economists whose views I respect say that even considering those variables, women's earnings do lag men's in many ways and clearly involve gender identity. So here's just one of the equality issues that call us to the post, if you'll forgive my Kentucky Derby analogy. The AAUW has been particularly active in this arena, and I urge you, go to their website to learn more about what we can do to advance the Paycheck Fairness Act. Yes, I remember celebrating passage of the Equal Pay Act just after I had entered the workforce full-time as a young woman. President Kennedy signed it into law in 1963, and in my youthful enthusiasm, I assumed that wage disparity by reason of gender was a thing of the past. Incidentally, when I took that first job after graduating from college in 1961, I'd been told by the company's human resources director that if I were a man, I would be paid more because I would have more financial need. As I wrote these remarks, the memory of that beginning to my newspaper career reminded me of the many times that I have been aware of seemingly little pieces of inequity that have denied many women equal participation in society. Unlike my mother, who was born before the 19th Amendment was ratified, I did have the right to vote when I was old enough, which in my case was 21 my senior year in college. Only a few states, including Kentucky, had 18-year-old voting then, but I became a registered voter in West Virginia, where I had grown up and where the age requirement was 21. Within 2 years of starting that newspaper career in Charlotte, Don and I were married, and I then learned one thing that marriage could mean in a way I had never imagined. My grandfather had left me a modest inheritance, a small piece of property, when he died. But I had to have my husband's permission to sell it. It wasn't a problem getting Don to say yes, but I'm still incredulous that this was the case in the early 1960s. And there's another very recent one of these little inequities that actually are big deals. It occurred yesterday when 2 women became the first female Army Rangers. Until now, of course, women were banned from even trying to become Rangers. Now, why anybody would ever want to do that is another issue, but and I'm looking for those first Navy SEALs. They still can't do that. Women still are not allowed to do that. Now, you'll note I did call these little pieces of inequity. We're still faced with many, many big pieces, like the unequal wages for the same work that I spoke about previously. The promise of the Equal Pay Act did not come about. And that leads to the need for the Paycheck Fairness Act, which would strengthen penalties, prohibit retaliation, and require that wage differentials be clearly related to issues other than the gender of the worker. And we could spend all the rest of today on that one and other issues of inequality that are wider than the workplace. And even when the unequal treatment is not solely gender-based, women have embraced leadership roles in demanding constitutional equality in so many forms. A good example is right here in Florida, where the state legislature is still struggling with that congressional redistricting. The Florida League of Women Voters was a leader and part of that court's action. In achieving that Supreme Court victory, that state Supreme Court victory, that overturned gerrymandering by the legislature. And believe me, ladies and gents, there were cheers across this country when you provided that leadership. And it's also a reminder of the shocking status of a related major issue of inequality on the nation's agenda, which is that of citizen voting rights. Like Florida's current focus on redistricting, voting rights is an issue that crosses all demographics of race, ethnicity, gender, economic status, you name it. America's promise as a beacon of democracy has been badly tattered by decisions of the United States Supreme Court, as well as by those of our Congress and even some state legislatures, in making the basic act of voting so dependent on convenience, whims, political trickery, and outright discrimination. And that is not my country that I've just described. I believe our most important way of celebrating the 95th anniversary of the 19th Amendment is to turn our efforts to restoration of the Voting Rights Act, which originally passed the Congress. It originally passed the Congress in 1965, 50 years ago this month. The act was amended several times, and I have special interest in this legislation because it was at the top of the League of Women Voters agenda every time Congress laid its hand on it. And I had just been elected national president of the League when the 1982 extension of the act was signed by President Reagan. By the time of that first bill signing for me, I was well aware of the reality that our work had just begun. And so it has. Our foremothers had a lot to do to make sure that the 19th Amendment became part of the Constitution. And they never gave up. That should call us to action to prevent other suppression through changes in the Voting Rights Act, to promote greater gender equality in the workforce through passage of the Paycheck Protection Act, by continued advocacy to ensure that the protections that would have been provided through the Equal Rights Amendment do take place, and so much more. It is surely time to celebrate what our predecessors did. But even more, we need to focus on keeping those dreams of gender equality alive through our own efforts. Thank you again so much for your attention, your interest, and most of all, your advocacy. Thank you. Thank you.
Dot, on behalf of everyone in this room, would like to thank you so much for your perspective on where we've been over the years while you were publisher and in your career. And earlier we mentioned that it took 80 years to get the right to vote, and it's been 95 years since then. And most of us in the room don't know what it was like to not vote. but we all have experienced many of the things that you've talked about, and it's time to do something about it. So thank you so much for motivating us to get recharged and get going. I would like at this time to introduce Judy Aker, President of the Sarasota League of Women's Voters, for closing remarks.
Wow, what a wonderful way to celebrate Women's Equity Day. Our congratulations to our honoree, and thanks to the many, many volunteers who put this together. You had them all stand, but believe me, they've had meetings and meetings and meetings, and obviously it was a very successful event. And how wonderful to have our inspirational speaker back. We think you need to come back to the area more often. This was fabulous. We are proud of your efforts, not only on behalf of the League of Women Voters, we have to get that in there first, but on behalf of all the people across this country whose lives you have touched. Now that you've heard about the efforts that were put forth on our behalf in the past, we are obligated to carry the spirit into the future. We cannot stop now. Remember, I've read several places, it's either 52 or 54% of the voters in Florida are women. So let's get out there. Have you seen the slogan? I am woman, see me vote. And speaking of voting, I just happen to have a form for voter registration right here. Perhaps you have a change of address or you're a newcomer to the area. We will be back at our table. We have certified league members who are able to register you to vote. And happily, I think we signed up 3 students today, so we're very happy. The theme for this Equity Day celebration was reflect, celebrate, engage. Well, we have certainly reflected, and we certainly have celebrated. Now let's get out there and let's engage. Hope to see you next summer at a similar celebration, and that will be in Sarasota, I understand. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, it was absolutely a wonderful occasion for me, and I did see a lot of folks I knew a long time ago and made some new friends, but it was especially a pleasure to cross paths with a lot of the folks who've been here, were here when I lived here before, with whom I shared many causes, advocacy issues. It was just a real treat today. Because if we don't, then the things we really want to have happen, the things we really stand for, will not come about. And I particularly do enjoy speaking to a female audience. I'll speak to any audience of any gender, but particularly among the women, because women have an opportunity to make themselves heard, not only among themselves, but in their families, their broader families. And women do constitute the majority of the population. I've always said, we cannot have a true democracy without full participation by every citizen, and certainly that calls or gives a special responsibility to women who sometimes opt out for reasons that I understand in some cases, but that we have to know how important it is that we do fully participate. And it is tough because in many cases women do have special family responsibilities which have held them back in many ways, but I understand that. I have a family. I have a special needs child who is called, and as a widow that's been particularly an important part of my life. But people face these challenges all the time, men and women. And I just believe that we're just now coming to the point where women are realizing that, okay, when you say you can't have it all, but that's not really what we're after. We're looking for a balance in our life to put emphasis on the most important things. Certainly, political participation, civic activism is one of those very most important things. You are part of a long, long history of activism by women in this country particularly, but it is true worldwide now. We're seeing more of that worldwide. But in this country, you're part of a long history of activism that have made women a force for democracy, a force for the good things of this life, and that we have to continue that strain as we celebrate our past, move forward, and celebrate it most of all by continuing those efforts into the future.
I thought today's event was fantastic. I'm standing here with 3 young ladies from Bayshore High School, and to have our students hear what women have gone through to give them the right to vote is truly inspirational and should be motivational, motivating these young people to carry on that most valued tradition. Women have a voice, and we need to know how to use our voices to make change and improvement for not only our community, our state, and our nation.
I enjoyed it. I thought that Dot's speech was really inspirational. All that she went through, all that she's accomplished, it really inspired me to step up and fight more for women's rights and equality and stuff like that.
I like the history behind it because I didn't know all of this. I haven't really taken classes on it yet. So I like the stories and learning everything that's happened and what we fought for.
I enjoyed the speech the most because she just gave me a bit of inspiration to do something bigger with my life. You know, every time I go to one of these things, I always get some inspiration to another direction, and I think that the whole celebration was really good.
Oh, I am very proud. Bayshore High has done a fantastic job in preparing not only our young women, but all of our students for the world of college and the world of work through our AVID program, which they have just qualified to be a national demonstration school for AVID. And these young ladies are a part of that program, and the fact that they talked about being motivated and inspired to step up, that partly is due to this event, but I also know their school has had a major impact on influencing who they are today. The one message I want parents and families to think about on the first day is calmness. Go to your bus stop. It may be a little late because we're learning new routes, and we have so many students that are entering our school system for the first time that we are going to be calm, we're going to be civil, we're going to be confident, and you know what? That 4C is escaping me right now. Consistent. Yes, there it is. We're kind of focused on the 4 C's: calmness, consistency, civility, and confidence. And I am very confident that our schools are ready for that first day because our school administration, our teachers, our bus drivers, food service workers, maintenance, custodial, I can't mention everyone, but all 6,000 employees are waiting for our students on Monday.
Unfortunately, we begin on that note, is that the job has only just begun, just like the song. But that will always be true because of the dissension among melting communities where you have many creeds and many things. But what's happening in the world right now spells out the tremendous importance it is for us to stick together as women. I've often said that inspiration to get things done is the flame, and you light it, but somebody has to help you. You need leadership. There's a wealth of people who could be devoting not a lot of time, but just enough to now, for example, saying nice things to policemen on the street, or being genteel and having civility in your meetings and many other things, which brings in a lot more interest than this so-called fighting that goes on. It's not even intellectually. It needs to turn spiritual right now. When people say, I hate America, then they should have heard Dot writings today, because that was the inspiration. But she's an inspiration, a person on fire who carried through those missions. And as everyone said, you're welcome back here anytime. When you can go to one state and every other state says that, But I really feel that women have a role and a right without having it written in paper. They have the babies, they handle the family, but I don't want to get to the point where women get bitter and don't understand men, because I have to tell you, I deeply feel men are a real important part in this life of ours. And that's the important thing. I happen to be married to a man who loved women. And he loved women not just for what they look, how they look or how they did in raising the children, but how they intellectually matched, where politics became a living and breathing thing in their life. And that's the same thing we have with these women here today. Share your thoughts with other people. Over the coffee cup, at a bar, or wherever you are, get the conversation going. Because then we will have this problem of not having to deal with terrible examples for our children. And that's the number one thing. The next, I don't care which generation it is, whether it's the matriarchs or the patriarchs or the first or the second or third generation, we all flow into the other. Male and female, children and grown-up, we are a society and a neighborhood, all at the same time. So I thank you for asking the question, and I hope that someday in the future it will not be a topic of conversation. It'll be a living, breathing memento of what we did here today.
I think it's to support everyone, particularly women here who have been disenfranchised in a great sense, even though 95 years ago the right to vote for women was put part of our Constitution. And so we eloquently heard today from Dot Ridings, there's still a long way to go to have that equal rights for everybody, including gender, to make it the country that we've all aspired to be part of. Well, I think the message was expressed so well earlier. Engage, continue, be passionate. And it's the effort of everyone that's going to make this the country that we all want to have. It's so nice to have students here to hear these messages. It's just a packed house. It's a real joyous occasion.
But I wanted to do a book on Florida women because there isn't any. This is not a collection of biographies. It is instead a history of Florida that emphasizes its women. It goes from prehistoric times to the present, and there's just lots and lots of information in it that people need to know. Because we aren't taught it, here's the most salient thing. I think this may be the first book in the world that makes it clear that there were women on every single original expedition to Florida between Ponce de Leon in 1513 and permanent settlement in St. Augustine in 1565. People don't realize that. We are not taught that. And Spanish women had strong roles. And Florida won't be under the American flag as long as it was under the Spanish flag until 2055. So those are the kinds of fundamental things that we aren't taught and need to know.
We are gathered here today to celebrate, reflect, and engage women and men in celebrating the 95th anniversary of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, which gave women the right to vote. And today's theme is, at Polo Grill Lakewood Ranch, we are talking about the woman who struggled to get us where we are today, and then we are also celebrating whatever we have achieved over the year, and we are engaging young women and men by giving them scholarships to attend our event. We are proud, and we feel that this is an important event, and it was started by us in 1995. Dorothy Ridings, who is going to be the speaker today, is the co-founder with me. We met in her office in Bradenton Herald and talked about it. I was on the Florida Commission, and she was the former president of the League of Women Voters. So 21 years of this has helped our community. All we do is tell people to vote. Vote regularly and vote sensibly. So again, we are saying this Equity Luncheon Committee, which was started by Manatee Commission on the Status of Women, co-sponsored by League of Women Voters of Manatee County, has now grown. 10 years back, Sarasota Commission joined in, and 5 years back, the League of Women Voters of Sarasota joined in. And today, we also have the American Association of University Women, all the 4 branches, Bradenton, Manatee, Sarasota, and Venice. So we are saying that let us be a catalyst to make sure that we progress, and united we stand. Thank you. We are also going to announce the comprehensive book which has been written by the Florida Commission on the Status of Women Foundation member Doris Weatherford, and it's published by the University Press of Florida. 5 of us got together about 8 years back and said that there is no history book written on women, or there is no mention. So the book is called They Dare to Dream, Florida Women Who Shaped History. So today we have the foundation here, and I would also like to thank our members like Kelly Siva, Michelle Manning, and Blanca Becerra, who put in a lot of hours, volunteer work to do this. Our main purpose of this book is that we are going to put these in schools, college, and university libraries, both private and public. So we are looking forward to not people buying the book, but buying additional book to be placed there. And later on, we'll be thinking about more things. And later on, I will also announce that we are even thinking about going at the global level. And this book is dedicated to the women of the past who struggled to bring us to this day, and the women of the present who are carrying on this mission to further our causes, and to the women of the future who will attain equality and make us proud. Thank you so much.